Test. Project Skyfall. Test. 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 Project Skyfall. Test. 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 Testing. 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 Okay. Testing. Testing. Project Skyfall. Project Skyfall. Testing. Testing. Test. Test. Hey, buddy. Test. 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Test. 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 Good. Project. Project Skyfall. Test. 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 1, 2, 3. Project Skyfall. 1, 2, 3. Test. 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 Test.
Give Pranav number. He's like, don't give anyone that number. So don't call him.
Oh, don't call him again?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll give you another number for him. It's
Oh,
his
that
cell.
cell number? He
Yeah.
said don't give that number? Okay, no worries.
I'll give you
He said to be able to call him today, but if there's another alternate number,
his other number.
yeah, I'll grab that off you, but I think we're doing okay so far.
Yeah, I'll just give you the other number too, because I don't think
I don't have anywhere to write it right now, but I'll come over to you in a second.
no worries, I'll text you.
Yeah. Test, test, test. Test, test, test. Test, test. Test, test, test.
And then you, and then get a fix, and then the
Test, test, test.
I just want to be really like good volume.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hear you. Let me know when you're good. Test, test, test. Just letting you know you're eating into my prep time too, though. Test, test. Test, test, test. Chris Lee looking sharp. Test, test. For audio. Test, test, test. Just focus to them, like.
No, but I mean,
Oh,
camera wise, like we're focused right here, right?
whole time.
The whole time.
We're just
here, just the screen, and like a little bit of this. That's it. Not looking at anybody else. You're good? Awesome.
Sorry. There's unavoidable. Just move it, move it walk in front instead of behind.
Sorry, that's
Okay, so she's doing it, I'm going to track down. Okay.
Okay, what, it's funny, I've got no responses from, can you make sure the mic's working over here? I just want to make sure I like that.
so I went into the link and brought it up on my phone and had my headphones in just as if someone was watching on YouTube, and that's what I was listening to when I heard.
No, I mean this thing. I gotta make sure this thing's up and running properly. I don't want this thing cut off.
And it's just random. Okay, so the question is, it's really just a random name process we have, it does not mean anything specific to any investigation.
That's right, yeah.
You just have to be in the James Bond space.
Yeah.
I remember.
Now, sometimes
We go on by name, so we were too close to what we were.
2 more minutes and then we'll be seated and then I'll go over this events for.
Hi, Frank.
All right, sounds good.
Let me know when you're good.
Good?
Presume El Salvador provides the next test. Salvadorian rules, and now we're trying to recruit a lot of American players with El Salvador ancestry. Here is Soria. Good slip pass to Anakubi across David. Big
Oh, that's not going. Go ahead.
save. The backup goalkeeper Kevin Canarvantes. Does it hit the threshold of red? Probably not. But is he looking for
Everyone
sure?
in blue here. It doesn't matter for the prop. Perfect. Okay, well, here.
So guys,
Big concourse, and get right back down.
Oh, feed out of this, and then just feed it. I just want to make sure you're
Right now we have just 3.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Hamilton Police Investigative Services Division. Today we will be speaking about Project Skyfall, an investigation into the organized crime and drug trafficking syndicate. I'd like to welcome Inspector Mark Stiller to provide details on the investigation.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. Project Skyfall was a 2-year-long investigation into a highly sophisticated drug trafficking syndicate involving organized crime groups in Hamilton, resulting in numerous arrests and the seizure of firearms, drugs, and property. In September of 2019, the Hamilton Police Service and the RCMP formed Project Skyfall in order to address drug trafficking and firearms-related offenses in the Golden Horseshoe. With the assistance of the Halton Regional Police, the fully integrated team was mandated to uncover, investigate, and disrupt serious and organized crime elements in our community. We know drugs have a significant impact on the streets of Hamilton and are associated with rising violence and the rise also of opioid deaths. Over the 2-year investigation, there were approximately 150 warrants and other judicial authorizations filed. In total, police seized 29 kilograms of cocaine, 3 kilograms of methamphetamine, 400 grams of fentanyl, and 440 pounds of illegal cannabis. Combined, the street value is over $5.5 million. Investigators also seized 13 handguns, 1 long gun, and also prohibited firearms components and other weapons. A total of $765,000 in Canadian currency was seized as well. Concluding in January 2022, 17 individuals were charged through Project Skyfall and 145 criminal charges were laid. A project like this could not happen without the support of our partners. By working collaboratively with our neighboring law enforcement partners, we were able to take a significant amount of drugs and firearms off the streets of our community. Organized criminal activity continues to be the public focus of our police service. Interagency relationships between police and other provincial and federal law enforcement partners remain strong and focused. We are working together to disrupt and bring to justice those who choose to engage in organized criminal activity across judicial boundaries and borders. I would now like to welcome Superintendent Jeff Cooper, Officer in Charge, District Command, RCMP O Division, to say a few words. Superintendent.
Thank you, Inspector Stiller. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am pleased to be here today to help share the news of this successful investigation, Project Skyfall. This investigation demonstrates how the combined efforts of law enforcement agencies and other government departments can effectively dismantle organized crime and hold those accountable who choose to participate in the violent and corrupting activities of organized crime. The RCMP and Hamilton Police Service, with assistance from the Halton Regional Police Service and the Criminal Intelligence Service Ontario, shared information, resources to identify, investigate, and intercept the organized crime that posed a threat to the safety and well-being of our families, our neighborhoods, and our communities. This was a long-term investigation focused on drug trafficking and firearm-related crime in Hamilton and the surrounding area. But it is important to realize that organized crime transcends jurisdictional and geographical boundaries. And I am confident that the effects of these arrests locally will be felt beyond the Hamilton area. Individuals associated with organized crime networks are not focused on any one type of criminality, but rather multiple markets at once. Organized crime groups seek to make a profit whenever and however they can. New trends will always continue to surface as long as there's money to be made from that activity. As you heard from Inspector Stiller, this project involved trafficking in cocaine, methamphetamine, fentanyl, and cannabis, and included firearm-related crime and proceeds of crime, like cash and cryptocurrency. Project Skyfall dismantled a network of people who conspire to traffic in some of the deadliest drugs that impact our communities. The presence of these drugs and other illicit synthetic opioids in our communities is a grave threat to Canadians. In addition, these highly toxic substances put our law enforcement members and employees at greater risk of harm from contact with them. Profit from illicit drugs, like the ones we intercepted, fuel organized crime, and the public pays for these crimes through increased taxes and higher prices on essential goods and services like healthcare. And of course, some pay directly as victims of violence or death. Drug abuse of any kind is a serious health and social problem, harming individuals, relationships, and families, often beyond repair. And the organized crime groups that produce, traffic, or bring those drugs into Canada must be stopped. I want to recognize and thank the agencies who are also here, for whose efforts have led to the results announced today. Of course, our partners, Hamilton Police Service and the Halton Regional Police Service, and also the Criminal Intelligence Service Ontario, who provided key support in our efforts. Thank you. Within the RCMP, thank you to the Golden Horseshoe Serious and Organized Crime Unit for your outstanding work. Without the partnership, cooperation, and intelligence sharing among these agencies, we would not have had the successful outcome that we are announcing today. You have all made significant contributions in reducing the criminal activities and profits of organized crime in the Hamilton area. Even with our many successes, like the one today, we must always treat organized crime like the persistent threat that it is. We have sent a clear message today, and together we will continue to provide safe homes and safe communities for all Canadians. Thank you. I'll now call up Staff Sergeant Sylvain Tessier from the RCMP Hamilton Niagara Transnational Serious Organized Crime Program to deliver these speaking notes in French.
Bonjour. Merci, Inspecteur Stiller, Surintendant Cooper. Bonjour à tous et merci pour votre présence. Je suis heureux d'être ici aujourd'hui pour vous faire part de la réussite de cette enquête, projet Skyfall. Cette enquête démontre comment les efforts concertés des organismes d'application de la loi et d'autres ministères peuvent permettre de démanteler efficacement le crime organisé et tenir responsables ceux qui choisissent de participer aux activités violentes et corruptrices de ce milieu. La GRC et le service de police de Hamilton, avec l'aide du service de police régional de Halton et du service de renseignement criminel Ontario, ont mis en commun l'information et les ressources pour démasquer les groupes du crime organisé qui représentaient une menace pour la sécurité et le bien-être de nos familles, de nos quartiers et de nos collectivités, et pour enquêter sur eux et les intercepter. Il s'agissait d'une enquête à long terme, axée sur la contrebande de drogue et le crime lié aux armes à feu à Hamilton et dans les environs, mais il importe de réaliser que le crime organisé transcende les frontières juridictionnelles et géographiques. Alors je suis convaincu que les effets de ces arrestations locales se feront sentir au-delà de la région de Hamilton. De plus en plus, les individus associés à de vastes réseaux du crime organisé ne s'adonnent pas à un seul type de crime, mais trempent plutôt dans plusieurs marchés à la fois. Les groupes du crime organisé essaient de réaliser des profits à toutes les occasions et par tous les moyens possibles. De nouvelles tendances continueront d'apparaître tant que se poursuivra la découverte d'activités lucratives. Comme l'a mentionné Inspecteur Stiller, ce projet concernait la contrebande de cocaïne, de méthamphétamine, du fentanyl et de cannabis, et incluait la criminalité liée aux armes à feu et les produits du crime comme l'argent liquide et les crypto-monnaies. Le projet Skyfall a démantelé un réseau de personnes qui conspiraient pour se livrer à la contrebande de certaines des drogues les plus mortelles qui touchent nos communautés. La présence de ces drogues et d'autres opioïdes synthétiques illicites dans nos communautés représente une sérieuse menace pour les Canadiens. De plus, ces substances hautement toxiques exposent nos membres et nos employés à des risques accrus. Les profits tirés des drogues illicites, comme celles que nous avons interceptées, alimentent le crime organisé et le public paie pour ces crimes par l'augmentation des impôts et des prix des biens et des services essentiels comme les soins de santé. Et bien sûr, certains en payent le prix directement en tant que victimes d'actes violents ou par la mort. L'usage de drogue, quel que soit, constitue un grave problème de santé et de société qui cause des torts souvent irréparables à des personnes, des familles et à des relations. Et les groupes du crime organisé qui produisent et font entrer ces drogues au Canada doivent être arrêtés. Je tiens à souligner le travail des organismes qui sont également présents ici ou dont les efforts ont mené aux résultats annoncés aujourd'hui et à les remercier. Bien sûr, nos partenaires, le service de police de Hamilton et le service de police régional de Halton, et le service de renseignement criminel de l'Ontario, qui ont apporté un soutien essentiel à nos efforts. Merci. Au sein de la GRC, le groupe des crimes graves et du crime organisé du Golden Horseshoe, merci pour votre travail exceptionnel. Sans le partenariat, la collaboration et la communication des renseignements de ces organismes, nous ne serions pas arrivés à cette réussite que nous annonçons aujourd'hui. Vous avez tous contribué de manière considérable à réduire les activités criminelles et les profits du crime organisé dans la région de Hamilton. Malgré nos nombreuses réussites comme celles que nous annonçons aujourd'hui, nous devons toujours traiter le crime organisé comme la menace persistante qu'il est. Nous avons envoyé un message clair aujourd'hui et ensemble, nous continuerons à assurer la sécurité des foyers et des collectivités pour tous les Canadiens. Merci.
Merci and thank you, Inspector Stiller and Superintendent Cooper. I would now like to move forward into our question and answer portion of the broadcast. One moment until everyone's patched through for the question and answer portion.
Hi, Dave. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. Can you unmute yourself and please identify yourself, whom you represent, and pose your question? Okay, we'll move on. Phil Perkins, welcome and thank you for joining us today. Can you please identify yourself, whom you represent, and pose your question? Moving on. Sebastian, if you want to unmute yourself, you can identify yourself, who you represent, and pose your question. You there, Sebastian?
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. Can you please identify yourself, whom you represent, and pose your question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. It's Sebastian Braun here from the Hamilton Spectator. And I was just curious at whether there was more than one organized crime syndicate.
Okay, is that the completion of your question? The question was, Is there more than
That was
one?
looked at in the course of this investigation.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to invite Detective Eric Harab to answer those questions.
Thank you. When looking at organized crime groups, I think it's important to recognize that a crime group itself could be any group of individuals that come together for a specific purpose of illegality in terms of making profit. So when looking at a specific group, no, there's various different types of groups that were involved in this case.
And we'll provide one follow-up if there is one, or we will move on to the next question. Sebastian, do you have one follow-up? Okay, moving on.
Sebastian, do you have any follow-up questions?
Yes, how big of a blow did you say? Yes.
Is that your question, Sebastian?
Does this deal with organized crime here in Hamilton?
One more time, can you please pose your question?
Jane Stevenson, welcome and thank you for joining us today. Can you please identify yourself, who you represent, and pose your question?
Hi, hopefully you can hear me. It's Jane Stevenson of the Toronto Sun. Can you guys talk a little bit about the kind of the collective effort of these different enforcement agencies in this particular bust, why that was necessary?
I'd like to invite Inspector Mark Stiller to talk about the Joint Force Initiative during this investigation.
Hi, just to answer your question, these type of criminal activities have no boundaries or borders. These activities daily transcend the confines of the Hamilton Police Service and move to neighboring jurisdictions. We have an excellent relationship with our law enforcement partners, with the Halton Regional Police and RCMP as well. So it was just a natural approach to investigate and to attack, so to speak, these criminals and organized crime groups in collaboration with our partners.
Thank you, Inspector Stiller.
Jane, do you have any follow-up questions?
If I could do a follow-up, I think this may have been asked already, but just in terms of how big a bust this is and what kind of impact it's going to have in the chain of how this works.
Okay, so in relation to the sum of drug seizures, we were well over $5 million. And in totality, there was Canadian currency seized over almost equaling 800,000. In relation to response to your questions, those numbers are precedent setting. Next question, please.
Welcome, Dave, and thank you for joining us today. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask? Go back to Phil Perkins. Once again, thank you for joining us. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask in relation to Project Skyfall?
Thank you everyone for joining us. This will conclude the media conference for Project Skyfall.